The blade falls in silence. Tatami drinks the blood of a merchant whose only crime, carrying the wrong coin. In the Japan of warlords and shogun, justice wore 100 masks. Every bow, every color, every word could spell life or death. Because here, the law wasn't written only on paper. It was carved into flesh, hierarchy, and the architecture of daily life. And for those who forgot their place, punishment was swift, cold as steel, certain as sunrise. What if I told you that in feudal Japan, you could be punished for the way you bowed? That a single word spoken too boldly could end your life? That beauty itself, just the wrong color of silk, could destroy your family. Tonight we step into the iron cage of order, a society where etiquette was armor, where disobedience was contagion, and obedience the only path to peace. Welcome to Japan Rewind, where history meets legend, and every law reveals the mind of a civilization built on precision, fear, and extraordinary discipline. Before we explore 10 crimes that would shock a modern mind, we need to glimpse the invisible machinery that made them possible. The iron laws of feudal Japan. From the chaos of the 13th century to the order of the Tokugawa Bakufu, Japan forged one of the most detailed systems of control the world has ever known. What began as scattered warrior customs hardened into edicts that reached from sword length to funeral rites. These weren't the whims of tyrants, they were the scars of a country that had survived centuries of civil war. When Tokugawa Ieyasu seized power in 1603, he promised peace, but peace demanded precision. To govern millions without constant bloodshed, the Bakufu built a world where hierarchy was absolute, and stability was worshipped like a god. Every gesture mattered. A peasant's bow, a merchant's robe, a samurai's word. Each was a signal in the grand choreography of survival. Step out of rhythm, and the machine would crush you. And that brings us to our first forbidden act. One so ordinary, you might have done it today without thinking. Crime 1. Improper bowing. Kyoto, 1500. A merchant bows to a passing samurai, but too quickly. The warrior halts. The air thickens. A single heartbeat too long, and the street holds its breath. Bowing wasn't politeness. It was geometry of the soul. The Ogasawara school of etiquette turned posture into politics. A 30-degree bow greeted equals. 45 meant apology. Full prostration, dogeza, meant surrender. To meet a superior's eyes while bowing was a challenge. A shallow bow could be read as arrogance. One too deep, mockery. Etiquette wasn't optional. It was survival. Children of samurai families drilled for hours, learning that even humility had rules. And for commoners, a mistake could invite a sword's edge rather than correction. In a world obsessed with rank, courtesy was armor, an invisible shield polished every day. So when travelers say Japanese politeness runs deep, remember, once it was carved into bone. But if etiquette could kill you, what about color? Crime 2. Wearing forbidden colors. Dawn in Edo. A merchant's wife steps into sunlight. Her obi a whisper of violet. By nightfall, her family is summoned before the magistrate. In Tokugawa Japan, fashion was politics. Sumptuary edicts dictated who could wear silk, gold, or certain dyes. Purple and crimson were symbols of imperial and high court status. Commoners were confined to cotton and subdued indigo, their lives painted in muted tones. These laws weren't about fashion. They were social control made visible. The government called it Shitsurei no Naikuni, a country without disrespect. To blur class through color was to blur the order of heaven itself. Inspectors roamed the markets, tailors were fined or humiliated for arrogant dyeing. Yet quiet rebellion found its way into every seam. hidden linings of forbidden silk, a violet thread under a sleeve, small rebellions that shimmered only in motion. In a world where color could condemn you, beauty became an act of defiance. And when beauty was dangerous, steel became sanctuary. Crime 3. Improper sword carrying. The clang of armor, the hiss of a scabbard. The katana, the mirror of the samurai's soul. But even the way you carried it could end your life. Only the warrior class could bear the daishu, the paired long and short swords. Hideyoshi's sword hunt of 1588 stripped weapons from farmers and monks, binding peace through disarmament. From that moment, the blade became a badge of caste. Yet even among warriors, the rules were exacting. The angle of the scabbard, the height of the hilt, how one rose while seated, all dictated by unspoken law. To draw your sword too soon could be seen as rebellion. Too slowly, cowardice. Yagyu Munenori, fencing master to the shogun, warned, "To mishandle the sword is to be dead before battle. To tilt your katana wrong before your lord was to tilt the balance of heaven and earth." Discipline was identity, precision, loyalty. The sword was morality made metal. And if the angle of a blade could condemn you, imagine what words could do. Crime 4. Speaking above your station. A tea house at dusk. Lanterns flicker. A farmer thanks a samurai and forgets gozaimasu. The warrior's hand pauses on his sword hilt. Silence. The air itself sharpens. In feudal Japan, language was rank made audible. Keigo, honorific speech, wasn't courtesy. It was class structure disguised as grammar. Every word placed you above, beneath, or beside another soul. To speak casually to a superior was to blur that line. A single, misplaced verb could humiliate, and humiliation demanded retribution. Merchants were reprimanded for boastful slogans. Letters lacking proper humility could ruin a reputation. Every syllable was a blade. To speak out of turn was to forget your place. And in a society built on harmony, forgetfulness was rebellion. Even breath carried hierarchy. And if a word could wound the spirit, a step could betray the body. Crime 5. Unauthorized travel. The road to Edo stretches through mist and cedar forest. But for most, that road was forbidden. Travel without permission, tabihan, defied the order of things. Checkpoints known as sekishio sliced the nation into compartments of loyalty. Travelers carried wooden passes, stamped with red seals and purpose declared. Samurai needed their lord's consent. Peasants, a headman's signature. Without papers, a wanderer was a spy by default. Fines, interrogation, confinement, rarely death, but always dread. And yet the road called. Pilgrims disguised as monks, merchants stretched their permits, and poets wandered in the name of art and prayer. Most were stopped. Some slipped through. The Bakuhu's peace was built on stillness. Motion itself became rebellion. For a country at peace, the borders were everywhere, and when walking too far was treason. Even the food you touched could turn into law. Crime 6. Improper handling of rice. A single grain falls from your bowl. Today it's manners to pick it up. 4 centuries ago, it was survival. Rice was currency, tax, and divine symbol. A lord's domain was measured not in acres, but in koku, how many mouths it could feed for a year. To waste it was to offend both government and gods. During famines, hoarding or giving away rice without approval could mean ruin. There are records of officials punishing villages for secret charity because generosity outside the system was rebellion in disguise. Families counted grains like coins, bowing before their storage jars, whispering thanks before every meal. From that fear grew reverence. The pause before eating. the bow after finishing, the phrase "itadakimasu," I humbly receive. Food was worship disguised as gratitude. And if rice could be sacred law, your house could be holy too. Crime 7. Unauthorized construction. A hammer strikes. A new roof rises. Then come the inspectors. In Tokugawa, Japan, even the skyline had hierarchy. Building codes controlled roof height, tile color, and timber type. No merchant could build a home grander than a samurai's. Farmhouses were limited to one story. City merchants forbidden ornate gates. A roof too bright was arrogance. A doorway too tall, rebellion. Fines, demolition, or loss of license followed swiftly. The message was simple. You could own your walls, but not your status. And yet, artistry found its escape. In minimalism, people discovered quiet power, the tatami grid, the paper door, the empty space that invited calm. When grandeur was banned, beauty learned to whisper. But if even your shelter belonged to your rank, what dignity remained when that shelter became your grave? Crime 8. Improper death rituals. A bell tolls beyond the mist. Incense coils above a coffin. And still, the magistrate's seal governs the dead. Funerals followed rank. Samurai cremated with full rites, commoners buried with simplicity, priests keeping strict count of who received prayers. Too lavish a ceremony risked fine or ridicule. Mourn too long, and neighbors whispered disloyalty to work and lord. Suicide revealed the same hierarchy. For a warrior, setsupuku cleansed shame. For a merchant, it condemned the family name. Some temples refused burial for such deaths. Others demanded ruinous atonement fees. Even sorrow had protocol. To grieve incorrectly was to draw suspicion, to invite inspection. Death, like life, was public property. In life you bowed to power. In death you still needed permission to rest. And if the grave had laws, so did the mind. Crime 9. Unauthorized education. A boy by lantern light traces characters in secret. The word is dream. Education, too, was hierarchy. Samurai sons studied Confucian texts and strategy. Merchants learned accounting and contracts. Peasants, only enough to read the tax notice or recite prayers. The temple schools known as Terrakoya spread literacy across Japan, yet every class had its ceiling. Teachers who educated beyond their rank risked expulsion or suspicion from local officials. Stories circulated of craftsmen who read too much, losing their guild privileges. Whether true or not, fear did the work of law. Knowledge was rationed, like rice. Too little, you served blindly. Too much, you saw too far. And if the pen could threaten order, faith could shatter it. Crime 10. Improper religious practice. Night, a candle flickers, a hidden cross rests beneath tatami. A knock at the door, 3 times. The Inquisition has arrived. After Christianity spread through Kyushu, the Tokugawa Bakufu banned it outright. The edicts of 1612 and 1614 turned faith into treason. Possessing a crucifix, whispering Latin prayers, or refusing to trample on a holy image was punishable by torture or death. Villages registered with Butsukiyu temples. Priests issued Tarauka certificates proving each family's loyalty. Faith became paperwork. Even within Butsukiyu and Shinto, worship followed class lines. Certain shrines and ceremonies reserved for those of rank. To believe outside the sanctioned path was to disappear. When heaven is policed, silence becomes the last prayer. But through that silence came peace. And peace came with a price. The weight of absolute order. These weren't isolated laws. They were the architecture of endurance. For over 250 years, Japan knew no civil war. The sword stayed sheathed. Rice harvests grew. Cities flourished. But every blossom of peace grew from soil fertilized with fear. People no longer needed punishment to obey. Discipline became instinct, etiquette, reflex. Bowing, speaking, dressing, eating, every gesture rehearsed for generations. Rebellion wasn't forbidden. It was unimaginable. Order became the air they breathed, invisible, vital, and heavy. Echoes in modern Japan. Walk through Tokyo today. The politeness, the precision, the harmony. They're not accidents, they're echoes. Behind every courteous bow and careful phrase lies the memory of a nation that once survived by conformity. What began as law became culture. What began as fear evolved into grace. The same discipline that once kept peasants from wandering now fuels bullet trains that run to the minute. The same restraint that once banned color now lives in the quiet beauty of minimal design. The same politeness once enforced by hierarchy now softens modern life with courtesy. But the question lingers: was the price worth paying? Would you trade freedom for 2 centuries without war? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you want to keep exploring the shadows and brilliance of Japan's past, subscribe to Japan Rewind, where history meets legend. And every story reveals the code behind the culture.